And we're live.
Hello, everybody. How is everyone out there? We are excited to be back. Sorry about last week. We missed it, but we're excited to be here. We got a fantastic live stream set up and ready to go for the day. Have an amazing guest here, and Soder is in, and he will be joining us shortly, and Tim Miller will be joining us shortly. But welcome once again back to Out of the Darkness. We're super excited. I missed the show. I was traveling last week. I'm still out of town now. We are tanning out here in Colorado, so having a great time out here, getting some sunshine and loving every minute of it. And first one, Jeremy Munson. From the Minnesota State House. Is excited to have you. Excited to have you join us and to speak. And you and Tim Miller are pretty good friends, aren't you?
Yeah, we were in a small caucus together, so we see each other all the time and sign on to each other's legislation. We're having a great time at the Capitol.
Excellent. I know Tim has spoken very highly of you, considers you to be a friend, and agree on a lot of things, on most things, but have some friendly disagreements on some things, which is okay. And that's what makes good friendships, right?
Yeah. When we have somewhat different districts as well, so we represent different people, and we do our best at representing our districts and working hard. So
Sure.
So there's going to be some disagreements in policy, but yeah, we get along great.
So could I ask you? I mean, with that being said, I mean we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. But let me ask you about that. I mean, because everyone has a plan. Like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get hit, right? And so I think those of us that are not in politics, we have all these ideas and these this I don't know. I mean, this ideology of how we would do things if we were there. You know, I would never allow this, or I would never vote for this, but until you're actually in the situation, I'm sure that there's a lot of surprises and a lot of things that change in ideology. Have you found that to be the case? I mean, was it a little bit different than what you expected, or was it pretty much exactly what you expected?
Well, it's worse than I expected. Like you, I thought you get up there and you're like, I'm not going to vote for this, and I'm only going to vote for these things. And then I learned quickly about the omnibus bill, where they basically roll hundreds of bills into one. So you don't get to vote on as many things as you want to vote on. You sit in, so we have all these committees. The first 2 months of the legislative session, we sit in committees. I'm on Health and Human Services, which the Finance Committee, which spends about 42% of our entire budget. And we hear hundreds of bills, spending bills on different programs, and I don't get to vote on them. I don't get to vote yes or no, because every bill gets laid over for possible inclusion in the committee's omnibus bill, which comes to us the last few weeks of session. And it's, 1,000 pages long, spends $37 billion, and I get one vote. So if there's 10% of the stuff I like and I want to vote for, I can't, because there's 90% of the stuff I don't want. So that's frustrating, that you don't get to just say, I voted for this or I voted against it. And so to go back to your constituents and they say, hey, how come you didn't vote for that thing we were talking about? Because it was in a bill with, 300 bills that were horrible. And so that's a little frustrating, which is why Cal Barr and I and Draz and Tim support single subject bills, so we can get back to having more bills and more votes and hold people accountable to their votes.
That's that's fantastic. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you consider yourself to be a Republican? Do you consider yourself to be Democrat? Do you consider yourself to be Libertarian? Where do you fall in that?
Well, I consider myself to be a small government Republican. So, I think in the Republican Party, there's a lot of different groups. People have different priorities. Sure. Some are more social conservatives. Some are more fiscal conservatives. I tend to be more on the fiscal conservative side. And really just small government. My campaign signs say Munson, less government. It's pretty clear. And, that really drives a lot of the decisions on how I vote for things.
Sure. So with that being said, we've had a couple conversations yesterday and today, off show. So and I've heard a lot about you. We've been trying for a little while to get you on the show, just because from what I've heard and things that I've been told, um, we have some pretty similar views as it pertains to small government. Um, so with that being said, um, what were some of the? I mean, you mentioned that once you actually got into office, that it was different than what you expected. But clearly, there has to come a time when what your personal beliefs are and what your constituents' beliefs are don't necessarily line up completely. How do you handle a situation like that?
Um, well, I mean, it really goes back to the election. I mean, in the campaign, there was, 4 or 5 people that ran for the endorsement for I ran in a special election. I should start with that. I was elected for the first time last year in February on a special election. So the previous legislator, Tony Cornish, resigned for sexual harassment accusations. And so then there was about 4 or 5 people that ran for the endorsement. And I was clear on how I'm going to vote. I'm voting for less government. Kind of went through my kind of policy on how I look at legislation and how I rank things, and out going and talking to voters and telling them how I'm going to vote, and pretty clear on it. So I think that there's being in an agriculture district, it's that there's some conflict in my interest there because farmers rely heavily. I mean, the agriculture is heavily controlled by government through regulations and tax policy, and so it's difficult to pull the levers reining in government because agriculture can be impacted.
Sure.
But most of those laws are federal laws. It's federal ag, the ag bill, and a lot of those things are federal. The things that I can do at the state level that impact agriculture are mostly reining in government bureaucracies, the DNR, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the Minnesota Department of Ag, and most of those are just regulations. And so my principles align with my constituents well, that most farmers want less government at the state level. So I think we're a pretty good match there, but I think that's probably the most difficult, going out and talking to constituents when I'm talking less government, but then there's some, ethanol requirements that help them. But that's federal, that's not state.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is interesting because we had a conversation with Tim about this a couple of weeks ago, and just talking about how, being as kind as I possibly can, that it seems as though as a party, as a overall party, that the Republicans have kind of come to a place where they've kind of embraced ideas that do grow government, and they have grown government. And the last couple of Republican presidents that we had grew the government immensely. And we seem to be against government programs that don't benefit us, but we welcome with open arms benefits that are government programs that we benefit from. So that seems to be an interesting place to take it, because I mean, obviously, you being a small government guy, we consider rural Minnesota especially to be mostly conservative for the most part. But what brand of conservatism do we see mostly, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, and I guess the two biggest things in my district where I can see big government Republicans talking pretty loudly out here is transportation, so spending on roads and bridges, and on healthcare. So then this kind of comes down to like the reinsurance program that most Republicans in Minnesota supported, that is more or less a subsidy to private health companies to lower the premiums. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of spending coming from the state government to subsidize healthcare and to pay for our roads. Right. I mean, I'm not a Ayn Rand libertarian that says we don't need government building roads. I think we do have a need to spend money on roads, but I don't like specific legislators advocating for one road over another. I think that all roads should be able to be assessed and using a formula determine the road that has so much traffic or so much need, and the surface of the road is degrading. I mean, you can figure out by formula which road should be redone, and we should just follow the formula. It shouldn't matter whether you have a Republican or Democrat, in your local area. We should just go off a formula. Yay, I see Representative Miller joined us.
The Honorable Tim Miller. How are you, sir?
Yeah, Walmart?
Not too good. I messed up. I didn't realize I was supposed to be remote. So I don't know if you can even hear me or if you just want me to phone up to my face. This is the best I can do for about the next half hour.
Well, we can see you and we can hear you. And never looked better, Tim. Never looked better.
Are you at a Walmart?
You betcha I am. They didn't have the equipment I wanted, so I'm moving on.
Well, that's all right. We're excited to have you on the show, and Jeremy is as good as promised. So thank you for helping us get him on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I apologize for the misunderstanding. So I'm going to be jumping in my truck here shortly. I'll let my wife drive, but we'll see how that works. Not how she drives, but how me sitting in the back.
Yeah. Well, because you voted for that hands-free bill, be careful with that. I don't want to see you get in trouble.
I don't think you voted for it. Did you vote? Oh, you did vote for it. You did vote for it. That's right.
I did one thing even better than voting for it. I voted against it once and for it once.
Oh wow.
I mean, if there's a way to be worse than voting for it, it's voting both ways, and then you're really a dirty dog.
Well, I once knew a guy who sat in a board meeting, which shall remain nameless, but he's on the show, that presented a motion and then refused to vote for his own motion. So I've seen such shenanigans before.
Yeah, well, we had one of the best ones at the legislature this year. So the Democrats are in charge of the House, and they wanted to have 100% renewable energy by 2050. And the other caucus, the old House Republican caucus, they wanted to make a stink about it. So they introduced an amendment to the energy bill to require 100% renewable by 2030, and to say, well, if you guys think it's so great by 2050, then why don't you vote for the amendment to make it by 2030? And this whole legislature, Republicans are in the minority, so we offer amendments. We vote for all the amendments. The Democrats vote them down. And on this specific one, when it came to a vote, the Republicans in the other caucus, almost all of them voted for the amendment, and the Democrats all voted against it. And the Speaker of the House locked in the vote. And so you had all these Republicans that you can stand up and manually change your vote by putting your thumb down. They had all these, I think in the end, there was 22 Republicans that voted for a requirement of 100% renewable energy by 2030. And it's on record for them voting for that. So that was pretty funny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's no, we all jokes aside, we give Tim a lot of trouble for being a big government guy. But we are fortunate in our area to have him representing us, because more times than not he gets it right. So
yeah,
we'll we'll take the big government and along with the conservatism, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's not responding. Come on, Tim.
Oh, he muted it.
Oh, okay. If I'm going to come after you, at least.
Okay, come after me. Sorry, I'm juggling. I just got in the truck, and Jacob is a little bit worn thin on us not getting home. So.
Uh-oh.
What were you shooting at me with now?
No, I was just talking about you being a big government guy, but we're very fortunate to have you because you have such great conservative views most of the time.
I am not a big government guy. I'm just a bigger than you guys government guy. That's all.
Yeah, in our caucus we have a stuffed rhino that we pass around. So,
and since I've won it so many times that we named the rhino after me.
It's called Millie.
It's called Millie.
Millie the rhino.
Yeah. Millie the rhino.
Yeah.
So Millie the rhino. So has everyone had a chance to hold Millie the rhino?
I think just Tim and I have had the rhino this session. So.
Okay. Well, it's a small caucus. It's okay.
And we do have get a new one. Jeremy doesn't even know this, but on my travels this summer, I have a boxing. I have a Trump that throws boxing punches. So that's going to be for the person who does the good thing for the day. Yep, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see that. I'll have to come down and see you guys in action.
Anytime.
Me and Soder will be down there sometime next session. So, well, fantastic. So okay. So wanted to post something since I have both of you guys here. So you guys have heard about the Area 51 storming. So we're about to see a bunch of people storm Area 51, which is kind of funny to me. But it supposedly it all started out as a joke. But I mean, there's over 1 million people signed up to storm Area 51. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that because I'm not going to delve into conspiracy theory too deep. But then we also have this situation that's trending right now that the government has been weaponizing ticks. Now, whether or not they were planning on using those against the people, or whether, go ahead.
What weaponizing what?
Weaponizing ticks.
Yeah, so the U.S. Congress voted a bill through that requires someone from the Department of Defense to come and testify on their program to weaponize ticks. So basically taking a tick and like a deer tick or whatever, and then injecting it with something that would, some kind of contagion. And evidently they may have had a program in the 60s or 70s to do that. And did it accidentally get released? And is that why we have Lyme disease?
Of course. So they're saying that they're going to weaponize the front.
No, it sounds like they are. It sounds like that ship has already sailed, and so they want to know if the government was behind it. Is the question?
Here's the deal. Area 51 is a secured federal facility, correct?
Sure. Yeah, but it's a military base, correct?
Right. So like any other military base, you can't just get on the base. There's a guardhouse, and there's access. You have to have the proper credentials. And for example, during wartime, there's not in wartime, but I'm using this as my example. During wartime, there's heightened security on post, and it's even more difficult to get on. Not just anyone can get on. I grew up near the nuclear accelerator Fermi Labs outside Chicago, and not anyone could just go on that site. Now, you could choose to go on that site, but guess what happens? You get arrested. Okay? So if people want to storm Area 51, they better take seriously what it is that they're doing, and then not cry foul if they run into problems.
Well, I think that's the whole point of 1 million of them going. They can't arrest 1 million people.
Yeah, but why is this the beginning of armed conflict? What happens when they storm it?
I'm not.
People die.
Armed when they
Well,
storm
it's streamed live on YouTube.
Okay, so let me make this very clear. I'm not for storming Area 51. I'm not saying that I want that to happen. But I guess it goes to a deeper discussion, and I'm glad both of you guys are on here. I mean, at what point do the citizens of the United States have the right to know everything that the government is doing? And where do you draw the line? If there's not to be full disclosure to the American people, where is the line drawn in your guys' mind? So
I think it has to do with national security. When it's secrecy has to do with national security, then there's a case that it can't be made, available to the entire public. But I think that it should be made available to a small group of people in government, more than just one person, so that in that group of people, if there's corruption that's going on, or if there's something is suspect, that they'll make a push to either stop it or expand the circle of people that know about it, so that we can do something about it. But Area 51. Well, we're talking about aliens that might be there. Is that the reason why they want to storm it?
I mean, whatever might be there. I mean, anytime you keep something secret, people are going to want to know what it is. I mean, heck, it might be just a regular military base for all we know. Who knows?
Yeah, but if I could address it, so I think it's a false premise to raise the question: does the American people have the right to know everything of what their government's doing? Because essentially, the answer is in our republic, the answer is yes. But that's not the question here. There is there is what needs to be known, as Jeremy said, what's for national security. So let me draw it down a little bit. Area 51 is provocative. Let's talk about Camp Ripley here in Minnesota. Okay, there are secure areas there. Even when I went, I'm in the Veterans Committee, so I went out there for a tour, and they put us in a tank simulator, which was kind of cool. But they said you can take pictures inside because it essentially looks like an M1 Abrams inside, but do not take a picture of outside the simulator. Okay? Now, do people have a right to know what the outside of the simulator looks like? And you may say this is an absurd point, but the point is that they're even on Camp Ripley in Minnesota, which is the National Guard base. Now, that isn't secure probably for the sake of like military security, but there's places on base that you can't go. Even if you're a soldier, you can't go for security's sake. So this assumption that full knowledge of what our government is doing means full access and doing whatever we want is just an absurd premise. There has to be some controls on things. And I go back to, if you have 1 million people that are invading Area 51, then who's to stop them from 1 million people invading Fort Bliss or something like that? And when does this become an aggressive act? And what does the military need to do? And my point is these people that are saying, hey, I'm going to go invade Area 51, they're going to bring their booze out there, their music, they're going to be having a good time. And then when they cross the line, they're going to be arrested. And if there's too many people that aren't going to be arrested, they're going to start suppressing that crowd in some way. Do we really want that to happen?
Tim, that's probably the most boomer thing I've ever heard you say. They're going to bring their loud rock music and their booze and partying and all that carrying on. They'll probably have some of that marijuana.
And you tell me I'm wrong. I guarantee you. There's going to be people out there partying, and then suddenly they're going to get tear gas or they're going to get stun gunned or something. And they're like, hey, you can't do that. I'm an American.
Hey, Tim, you'll be glad to know that I've been in Colorado for nearly 10 days now, and I am still alive. I've been on the roads. I have not been hit by any under the influence of the marijuana plant drivers. So,
up,
huh?
Eating gummies, drinking Kool-Aid.
No, I'm good. I don't need any of that stuff. I mean, I'm good. I've had some tequila though, and some green chilies. But other than that, no, I'm good. But just wanted to make sure you know that I am safe. So I mark myself safe. I got to figure out how to do that on Facebook. Mark myself safe from potheads.
Good. It's not a show without bringing up marijuana, so thank you.
Hey, you know what? I just wanted to make sure you knew that I was safe. I thought that would be important to you to know.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
So, okay. So, but I guess the spirit of the question is this. At what point, because I think we would all agree that we would like more transparency from our government. I mean, could we all agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that was an interesting point you brought up, Jeremy, in the issue of national security. The only problem I have with that is, where does that line get drawn? I mean, when it comes to national security, I mean, they said that for national security purposes, that they needed to start collecting all of our data, from emails to phone calls to text messages, for national security's sake. So, I mean, so at what point, and I know that's a tough one, but at what point do we say, okay, this is going to be disclosed to the people?
Well, so if there was aliens that crash landed here and we put them in Area 51, that isn't taking away stuff of mine like data collection is. I have a hard time with government collecting data under the guise of national security. But if there is a secret or something that they're developing that they can't disclose, like Tim said on the tank or the simulator, as a matter of national security, then I think they have a right not to disclose everything to the public. But in the case of Area 51, let's just assume that there were aliens that crash landed here, and there was technology that they had to research or something. Oh, maybe it was national security, but I don't know, what has it been, 60, 70 years? Can we now look back and say, whatever documentation there was at the time, is it still a matter of national security, or can you disclose it? I think it should always be scrutinized to say, well, if it was top secret then, is it still top secret? Can we do a Freedom of Information Act? And if there's a million people that want to get into Area 51 to explore it, and there's nothing to hide, then hey, let's figure out how to make Area 51 open to the public, and whatever Air Force Base stuff that needs to happen, let's move it to a different location.
Right. Well,
then we'd be invading Area 70.
How about Fort Knox? Let's. I want to see the golden Fort Knox.
Oh yeah, definitely, and the Fed.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. In fact, I'd rather see the golden Fort Knox over the Area 51. So, just my own personal. So if I get to choose what I get to see, yeah, I'm gonna choose Fort Knox.
Yeah.
Actually, I probably would choose Antarctica, because we all know what they're doing down there. But another story, another day.
No,
so
Antarctica is the entrance to the middle of the world, as evidenced by Iron Sky, the coming race.
Right. So Tim, I wanted to ask you, because I've been gone. I know we've got a big fundraiser coming up. What's going on with that?
So this really happened last week. I don't think Jeremy even knows about this. I haven't told him yet. So I have an annual fundraising event for my campaign. It's just a nice summer event at a local farm winery. We have those in rural Minnesota, and it's a nice event. And truth be told, the last 4 years, this would be the 5th year. The last 4 years is pretty. It's more about the getting together, less about the politics of it. The politics is certainly in the room, but it's, we kind of keep it light and mild and just have a good evening. Well, this year, going into having the event, I decided to bring mine and Jerry's good friend and a member of our caucus, Representative Steve Juskowski. He'd be someone that I would normally invite anyway to come out. You always find a special guest just to kind of say, be honest, hey, Tim's a good guy, be sure and support him, sort of thing. But there's an interesting connection with Steve this year. And he has been working very diligently, primarily first on the campaign finance rules that have been broken by then State Representative Ilhan Omar, now Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and that's kind of precipitated some other things that she's being investigated for, certainly by the press. There's some notions that maybe some other people are looking at it. So I invited him out to tell him what he knows. Now, he's been on Tucker Carlson, he's been on Laura Ingraham, he's been all over local and statewide news. He's pretty involved in this. And out here in this area, this is an important issue for the people, especially kind of the grassroots Republicans. They'd like to know. So I thought this would be good. So we're going to have this event at my winery, like always, and I invited him. Well, I get a call Friday morning from the owner of this business, and he said, and he didn't even know what was going on. He's been busy. His house burned down about a month ago, and so he's been more occupied with that than he doesn't even know what's going on in the news, much less what's going on with me. But he started getting attacked from locals, Democrats, that said, this guy, Steve Juskowski, is evil. What he's bringing up is hate mongering of Muslims. And this guy Miller is trying to do this and that. And they basically and I never heard any of this. He called me. They've only been attacking him and his wife on social media, emails, and phone calls. And they started putting out a public announcement on Facebook to boycott his business because I was going to be there with Steve Juskowski. And this is just a good guy that lives locally. I mean, him and his wife have a neat business, and I like using their place because it's a way to promote local businesses, right? So I went and talked with them on Friday, and we sat down, and we decided, now, they were already drug into the mill of something. I didn't want to keep them there. This isn't fair to them, their business. And so we discussed it, and what we mutually decided was I would move my event to an American Legion, because I'd like to see these whack jobs bully a bunch of veterans. It's not going to happen. I don't want this guy's business to be hurt. I don't want him to become the target of conversation and stuff. So we backed away from that. So my event is going to be at the American Legion in Montevideo. But I can tell you, this guy, him and his wife are relatively, I won't call them apolitical. They're just not super politically involved. And over the last year or so, I helped them with something at the state with some signage issues they were having with MnDOT. And they're starting to get involved. Well, this whole case of people, there's about 10, 12 people that were just mercilessly attacking them. Well, I'm guessing they're going to totally withdraw from the process. And I have a fundamental problem with this, that people are coming in and bullying and threatening and saying, boycott this business because Miller and Drazkowski are going to be there. That's a problem. So that's what happened. Are you all stunned?
So,
or did I lose you?
Stunned, very stunned. Brings to mind a case of that I was sort of involved recently with the political thing, and the VFW that we were trying to get said no more political stuff because they had been attacked. So they can be bullied too.
well, I mean, okay, and I'm upset about it primarily because I like Tim and Tim's a good guy. But I mean, how is that any different than what I mean, as conservatives, we're the kings of boycotting, aren't we?
Yeah.
Boycotting? Yeah, I don't, you know what, if there's someone, now here's the difference. If someone says, I don't like that Miller is going to be there, I'm not going to, I mean, I think it's a little bit of an overreach to say I'm not going to go to that business anymore. Okay, fine. But to go on social media and to be attacking this couple and to be saying boycott their business because they have Miller there, you know, I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal. They're perfectly within their rights, but that's just absolutely stunning. Now, if you really want to start splitting these hairs, I'm bringing in elected State Representative Steve Drazkowski. You know, if I brought in, you know, I don't even know who it was, but just some volatile, you know, crazy person that, you know, then I understand it. But this is an intelligent person who carries a great deal of respect in the state of Minnesota.
Right.
But they don't his politics, and so they're what are they doing? They're not hurting Steve. They're not even hurting me. They're hurting this couple.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's the point to that?
Well, you know, and I think that this is just a reflection of how politically divided our society is. And, you know, this is about elected officials. But next year, people, it's going to get worse because for the first time in history, when you go to vote in a presidential primary next year, you're going to be on record of what political party you're affiliated with. You know, right now, when you go to vote in the primary, you get a ballot that has Republicans and Democrats on the same ballot, and then you just vote one side and turn it in. And there's nothing in the records that say who you voted for. But next year, because of the laws that were changed at the legislature, it's going to be basically public. I mean, the last minute of this, at the last minute this year, we voted to make it only available to people in the parties. But that's thousands and thousands of people in Minnesota that will have access to that. So if you are politically active, but maybe just not, out there and that public about it, and you work for a conservative company and you're liberal, or you are a conservative and you work for Google, your boss is going to have access to this. I mean, that is information that they will want to buy. And when you go to apply for a job, they'll be able to figure out which party you're involved in. And so this division in our society is going to get worse. The impacts are going to be more than just political fundraisers. It's going to apply to employment law, housing. If you go to apply for an apartment, and your landlord can figure out if you're Republican or Democrat. Do I want that? That it's going to have broad impacts. And so we need to figure out as our society how to get along better and how to have respect for people's opinions when they're not the same as yours.
So along that note, what was that, Soder?
Well, I have a question of sorts. Would you support the repeal of campaign finance laws in Minnesota?
Would I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Fantastic. Oh gosh, that'd be great.
It depends on what laws you're talking about, but as far as like financial limits and stuff like that,
Financial limits, having to report names.
yeah, because I think that's really what it comes along with. I mean, people think, and my whole family, I should have said this to you guys earlier. My whole family are major socialists, like my parents and cousins and aunts and uncles and whatever. I'm the only Republican in my extended family. So, and when we talk about like they're all big Bernie Sanders supporters,
I'm so
like,
sorry.
we need to get money out of politics. We need to overturn Citizens United. And I say this is about freedom of speech. And when you put strict limits on how much you can donate to candidates, it just gets spent out there on independent expenditures, on behalf of candidates. We had Dan Feehan running in the 1st congressional district down here, and he kept on saying, "I don't take corporate money like my, Jim Hagedorn does." Nobody takes corporate money, but maybe you didn't take direct donations from PACs, but there was millions of dollars from PACs spent on your behalf, so it doesn't even matter. I'd rather have all the money go into the campaign, and I guess I would support removing the financial restrictions, but just tracking who it comes from, and then we could just be more honest about people. I think if you were to say,
"Oh, you lost me at tracking. You lost me at tracking, man."
I think it's important to know, because when I look at someone's votes and they're voting for something like single payer, but Blue Cross is the one that should do it. Yeah, I want to see how much money Blue Cross gave him, right? Or people that work for Blue Cross, executives. That's important public disclosure. But as for the small dollar donations, maybe you could raise that limit so that you can donate, $500 or $1,000 to someone without being on the record. That would be fine. But I think we need some accountability to see who's pulling the strings out there for the big dollar stuff.
Soder, you actually have a problem with us spying on government officials and finding out where their money's coming from?
Because that spying, it requires spying on me. That's
no,
why.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
Hey,
If I give a representative, if I give a public official $1,000, specifically a representative like Tim or Jeremy, my name goes on a list that anyone can go get. So yes, they know that someone's influencing a public official.
That's the way that's the way it is right now.
Yeah, that's the way it is right now. But I can't give them money to help them against an entrenched politician, like let's say Colin Peterson. If I had the money, I wouldn't be able to give Tim Miller over $10,000 at a year, right?
Correct.
So
11-4, but yeah.
What?
11-4 technically.
11-4.
Yep.
So he's limited in fundraising. But if I had $1 million, I could just give it, under systems many, many years ago, I could just give him as much money as I wanted. Wasn't reported. My businesses wouldn't suffer from it. And now because we've gotten rid of that, now that we track all this stuff, it seems to only hurt conservatives in this regard. And it hurts me when my side of the aisle is saying, "Oh, we got to keep this stuff in place because we want to know who's giving money to Bernie Sanders." But it's shooting ourselves in the foot because we can't raise money because the folks who would want to give it can't give it.
Well, understand the far bulk of money that goes into campaigns. I mean, I can give you exceptions to this, but when you want to talk about the big money, it's not so much about Republican, Democrat. It's first of all incumbents versus non-incumbents, but also just as important, you make a point when you talk about conservatives. If you label a conservative as someone that is going to be, slow to respond to outside pressures, a big lobbyist, whatever that may be, and they're slow to taking money from that, then you're right. But because what happens at the federal level, so like Colin Peterson, you use him as an example. He doesn't raise much money at all from individual donors in district. He gets almost all of his money from PACs and from large donors on the East and West Coast. And people fundamentally have a problem with that because I know they're thinking, well, if he's all that important, people from his district, that's where he should raise the money. But he understand that, like, you made a mention that the most you could contribute to me if I were running for Congress in a couple of $11,400 to raise $1.5 million, $2 million to run for a congressional race. That's even at $10,000 a piece. That's a lot of donors, much less most people can't give that much. Whereas if you're an incumbent like Colin Peterson, you're getting $5,000 and $10,000 checks all over the place from PACs. That's where the problems lie.
Well, I'll tell you what the problem really is, and that's we need to get money out of politics by getting government out of making economic decisions that impact businesses. If government
can you say that again in a Vermont accent?
Well, I mean, the problem I have with government is that, we have all these tax loopholes that we can, if government can pick winners and losers, then there's money in politics. But if we would just have a level playing field and stop creating specific tax loopholes for certain corporations or certain industries, then there'd be no reason for businesses to give money to politicians. Let's get government out of making these drastic economic decisions. Let's simplify the tax code and stop, with these government handouts and then we wouldn't have all this money in politics. That's Absolutely. My solution.
So a couple of months ago, I was reading in the newspaper, it was saying that in the state of Minnesota, and I know we have to keep going, but I wanted to ask you guys about this. In the state of Minnesota, that there was legislation being introduced that would require that any candidate that was running for president or running for office would have to show their tax returns. If they did not do so, their name would not go on the ballot. Is that something that came through, or is that something that died?
It passed the House, didn't pass the Senate, and didn't come back in special session.
Okay. Yeah. And what about the whole issue with the what was it, the electoral votes being divvied up?
So that was legislation that would have basically usurped the electoral college. That didn't pass either. I mean, it was a stupid bill. I mean, just say it like it is. I think, unless you guys think for some reason it's we should be abolishing the electoral college or going around it. It doesn't make any sense. I believe we should be supporting the minority voice out there, and that means states that are less populous should have a little stronger vote in proportion. So that's why we have the electoral college.
Sure, absolutely.
And also, I mean, if you were to go by a national popular vote, then every state would start lowering the voter age, right? I mean, California, even Minnesota this year had a bill to lower the voting age to 16. Well, if we had a national popular vote, then why not lower it to 1? And then I can vote for my kids and get more votes for Minnesota so we can have a larger strength here. And why not allow, non-citizens to vote, keep on pushing the limits. So I think keeping the electoral college is important.
Sure.
I'd like to address the tax return thing. I don't know if people really care about that one or not. Right now in politics, people that are against that sound like they're protecting Trump, which is really the whole reason why it's happening politically. I can tell you that when I ran for Congress, you have a federal financial form that you have to fill out that gives all the information that you would need and then understand the finances of an individual. Okay, you don't need a tax return to find things out. What they're attempting to do is actually every time Trump says I don't want to give it, they use that he must be hiding something because that's provocative, right? And I can't tell you why he doesn't want to give it up. I can tell you why I don't want him to give it up, because I don't want to. This goes into this, the original part of this discussion of the American citizens have a right to know everything about their government. Well, they have a right to know a whole lot about me because I'm an elected official. But where does that line stop where people don't have to know every single itty-bitty thing about me? It's real easy for someone else to say, let me look at everything in your tax returns. Just turn them over and let me look at them and spend time with them. Would any of you do that if someone came up and said, give me your tax returns and let me look at them as long as I want, however I want?
Well, Tim, I would disagree. I mean, I think people have a right to know what's driving Trump financially, and that is not in his tax returns. That's in his financial disclosure, which is required by law.
That's
So
right.
you look at his tax returns. It's not going to tell you what people think it's going to tell you,
No.
but it will show that Trump or his attorneys are taking advantage of every opportunity in the tax code. That but it's not tax. It's not tax. I mean, tax avoidance isn't illegal. Tax avoidance is what you should be doing. You should be going through every tax deduction and making sure that you don't qualify for that, or if you do, use it, because that's why it's written. And Trump's tax attorneys are going to be leveraging every single loophole. That's fine, but it's I don't think his tax returns should come out. I don't think we should discourage successful people from running for office.
Correct. I agree with you totally with that. And if you hand someone information, then they use it as their talking points. And I don't blame them for saying, "Listen, I'm going to control what it is that I want to talk about." And look at all the time that they spend on Russia, even though there's nothing there. His taxes are just going to be, someone's going to find this, find that, determine this says this or that says that. So I have no interest in handing out everyone's tax returns. It just doesn't provide anything. The point that I wanted to really emphasize is that when you run for federal office, state office, you have to disclose certain things financially, but it's a little bit simpler. But at the federal level, you dump everything that you have on there. Assets, major debts, everything is on there on the disclosure. So Jeremy's right. The things that you want to know about what motivates Trump and where his money is and where it isn't and stuff like that, he's already disclosed.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I got really excited, Jeremy, when you said I disagree with you. I thought finally we're going to see the war of the Titans.
Yeah.
I warned you guys to agree with me more than you think.
We do. We do. So I mean, but back to the whole thing about the. I think it's a terrible thing. I hate the idea that we can be civil. The idea that you have to have a fundraiser. I mean, that's just that's the nature of the beast. But the idea that someone would threaten a business, a small business, a family-owned business, simply because they were allowing I don't care if it was Ilhan Omar or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, if they wanted to have an event someplace, I believe that should be allowable, and that should be a fair game.
Yeah, I have sort of a problem. Like, let's say this couple was endorsing, promoting. They invited me to come out. They exposed themselves, if you will, to my politics. There may be, there's business owners that say, you can't put a sign in my business because it's just I serve both Republicans and Democrats. I get that. That's prudence, okay? But this took it a step further. I just rent their space.
Yeah.
Question.
They're just baking you a cake, man. Right?
Well, but I'm using their space. And if there's a further disappointment for me is I just know this couple, and it was amazing. About a month and a half ago, about 2 weeks before their house burned down, I was over at their house picking up some wine as a gift for a friend of mine. And we had a discussion, and this younger couple, when I say younger, they're younger than me. They're in their probably mid-30s, I'd call it. Maybe, yeah, we'll call it mid-30s. and they were asking they're starting to become politically involved where they wouldn't before. And I'm not talking like we were hard charging on Republican stuff. I was giving, because I don't want to do that to them. But I was giving them the basic, questions, answers, and stuff like that. And this just puts a sour taste in their mouth. And I can tell you the people that were attacking them, who they know personally, they know who these people are, did not have this couple's interest at heart at all. They wanted to use this as an opportunity to go after me, to make me feel bad, I suppose, in their mind, make me look bad, and all this stuff. And all they did was they hurt this couple, and they diminished the political system a little bit. They didn't solve anything. They were just troublemakers, and they tried to bully the situation. And I just think that's not okay.
Question, Tim. Did you have a contract?
What's that?
Did you have a contract?
Rural Minnesota. Hey, can I have an event at your winery? We were doing it on a night, so they're open weekends. So we do this on Thursday night, so we don't interrupt, their other crowds. So no, there's no signed contract. Even if there was, not to force the issue, I would have backed away from it.
That sounds like a contract to me. Having listened a lot to Nick Rekieta, I think it would be really funny if someone got sued for tortious interference with a contract.
Yeah.
Like, that would be really funny to me,
but
especially a political thing.
Yeah, but here's
can you imagine?
I can, but here's the deal, and here's where I'd like to see politics get away from things. You could do that. I told him when he told me this story, especially since Steve has literally been on national news. I'm not saying this would have become a national story, but we could have done things that really lit this up and really made it a political statement and really hammered hard and stuff like that. And I'm just not wired that way. I look at this couple who've been good to me. I've been good to them. They're local business owners. I'm not going to use them because then I become as bad as those idiots that were doing what they were doing to them. But You're right. You probably could file a lawsuit, and it would be kind of a fun mental game, but I don't think it serves anything. So no, I wouldn't do anything like that.
Well, it would stop people from calling wineries and interfering with business.
No, it wouldn't.
Well, there's a big government answer here. You could pass some equal protection right. So when we were at the legislature this year,
no, freedom of association, man.
Hang on. There was an equal rights amendment, which was not about gender equality. It was not about sex equality, the sexes. It was trying to change the definition of gender. But I had an amendment to it that I did not introduce, but it was going to basically say giving protection to people based on political affiliation. So. If that were to have passed, California. Yeah, well, if that were to have passed, then you could say, hey, the restaurant owner or the vineyard owner could tell the person calling, I can't discriminate based on political affiliation. So
I mean, but tell me this though, how is this any different from the whole cake situation?
Well, because the cake was actually creating, it had to do with artistic license. Like you're not just having someone bake a cake, you're actually having them create something for you like an artist. So, a bakery can't discriminate against you just because of your sex or because of your color, but they could say, I'm not going to bake a cake, or I'm not going to create an artwork. You can't commission me to make a sculpture of a phallus for you for your gay wedding because of my political beliefs.
So you truly believe that if I were going to go into St. Paul, there's a couple of bakeries that I know of, and are going to say Trump is having a rally. I want to get a Trump cake made. That I wouldn't run into someone who might say I'm not going to make that cake because it's a Trump cake, and I don't stand by that.
And I think they have a right to.
Really?
Well, just you can't force a business. That business owner, however stupid a decision it would be to say they're not going to serve, they're not going to create something for you. I think it's
I'm not going to serve a black man asking for a mega cake.
But if you walked into my bakery and said, I want a slice of key lime, I can't say I don't serve your kind. That's different. But if you're asking me to create something,
I'm dying. The idea that they would deny a black man service because he's ordering a mega cake. Q, you got to do it.
That would be pretty good.
So no, but back to that. So do you believe that companies should have the ability to deny a service that they offer? I mean, because if they are a bakery, they make their money serving, are making things for customers. Do you feel like they have the right to withhold service from someone solely because of their sexual orientation?
No, not denying service, but the difference being it's not just baking a cake, it's not just getting a sheet cake off the shelf. They were asking that person to use their art, the baker was an artist, and they were asking him to create something special for them, for that event. And that's where it crossed the line, I believe, with the courts. So I'm not an attorney, but that I believe there's a difference there. It's not saying you deny service. It's that you can't force somebody to create art for something they don't believe in.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue that. I mean, solely because
Yeah, but there's a business near my district, Cambria, that makes us countertops, and they chose to put on the side of their building, this is Pawlenty country when Pawlenty was governor. Hey, that's bold and that's a big political statement, and good for them, but that's their decision. And once they put that out there, they, Democrats may not buy Cambria countertops, and that you're making a choice when you jump into the political environment.
Well, Pawlenty was a Democrat, so I mean, I don't know why they'd be upset about that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, but you might have liked Pawlenty. I'm sorry. I apologize. Well, no, I don't, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, but with all that being said, okay, so right now, we just saw that Twitter, or not, that the Supreme Court, or not the Supreme Court, the appellate court said that that Trump violated free speech by deleting people off of his Twitter, by blocking people on his Twitter, right? So, I mean, as a conservative, especially for you, Jeremy, and then Tim, I'd like to hear from you as well. I mean, at what point is it okay for a private business, because I mean, Twitter has kicked a lot of conservatives off of Twitter, and it seems to only be conservatives. I haven't seen very many situations where a liberal has been kicked off of Twitter for, I mean, heck, ISIS had an account on Twitter for a long time. I don't know if they still do or not, but for a long time they did. And the reason why they allowed it was for free speech sake. So at what point does the government have the right to step in and tell a business, you know what, I know this is a private company, but you have to allow this or else? Or do you believe they have that right?
I don't. I mean, Twitter can do whatever they want. It's a private business. There's a big misunderstanding about what the First Amendment is. The First Amendment means that the government can't limit your speech. It does not give you the right to say anything you want on Twitter without Twitter, removing it or removing you. They can do whatever they want. And if they take a ton of conservatives off of Twitter, then you know what? I hope that another conservative Twitter opens up, or a more free Twitter opens up.
But that seems to be the problem, though, right? Because while that is the case, we have companies like PayPal that are refusing to process payments for people who are conservative. So, and we saw that with Gab a while back. They were making ground. They were coming along. I mean, MasterCard made a similar statement. So the question that I have is, yeah, we can do that. We can say that, we can hope that a conservative version of Twitter comes about, but if they are not going to be able to process payments in order to be able to keep their platform going, then at what point does the government step in, or does the government step in and say, no, we're not going to allow you to discriminate against people? Because at this point, it's not necessarily racial discrimination that we're experiencing as much as we are experiencing political discrimination. So at what point do we pursue that?
I'm not an attorney, I'm not a judge, but I'd like to see it play out in the courts and see what happens. What do you think, Tim?
So a couple thoughts that are coming to mind. Hopefully I hit all them real quickly here. First of all, we're in an era that's, understand, has been transformational, equivalent to when we first started printing with the Gutenberg press. It literally compare the internet and what we're doing now to that large of a societal change, of a global change. And with that comes these difficult conversations that you have of where you draw the lines, where you think you stand on something, you sound like you're contradicting yourself later. So there's more work to come. And again, I agree with Jeremy in that I think not only what the courts decide, but what gets discussed in the opinions of the courts will be fascinating to see. Now, when it comes to political speak in the United States, and this is another thing, not only do people not understand it's about the government controlling, but also there's different levels of freedom of speech. So, for example, your most guaranteed and your strongest freedom of speech is political. Your probably the most controlled and narrow is pornography. There might be something more, but that's kind of pretty much the spectrum that we talk about. And there's controls on pornography that's different from political. Now, the one other piece of it, Jeremy and I are elected officials. Okay, we choose to put ourselves in a form that's different than other people. So what that means is that we are naturally more accessible. We are naturally, like, you can say things about us in a campaign that don't necessarily have to be true. The bar for libel in a political case is so high, it's almost untouchable. It's almost, I mean, there are things, but I will tell you there are some protections still. So, for example, when I had someone that did a Facebook message and kind of referenced the biblical Samson story with jawbone of an ass, and it sounded like he wanted to beat me and my wife, you can't say that about an elected official. If you threaten an elected official, you can be charged with a crime. So I know I'm kind of over place, but as it applies to Twitter, I agree with Jeremy. If Twitter wants to control things, do I think there should be public outcry? Absolutely. Do I think there should be pressure put on them? Absolutely. Do I think government needs to come in and control it? I don't know about you boomers that want to control everything in our lives, but us freedom-loving people don't believe that they should be controlling that sort of thing. Gotcha.
Sounds like someone wants to get rid of Section 230 or actually enforce it. I'm not sure which.
I don't even know what Section 230 is.
Section 230, it basically gives online platforms like Twitter or Facebook the ability to have things posted and not be liable for slander or defamation type of things. Because without it, they were often treated like newspapers were. And if you publish something in a newspaper, for instance, the newspaper could be sued along with the person who actually wrote it. So Congress made Section 230 to deal with that so that companies like Facebook or Twitter who aren't reviewing everything that's posted wouldn't be held liable for infringing content, slanderous content, pornography, child porn, that kind of stuff. But it's gotten perverted because there's this clause in there that says they can censor socially unacceptable things. So that's how they get around being protected from lawsuits while also silencing conservatives, banning them from their platforms, and stopping you from talking about certain things. If you got rid of it, Facebook and Twitter would actually have to moderate the content or be sued. They would effectively die. Or if Congress would clear up to say, well, this socially unacceptable stuff is strictly pornography, child porn, stuff like that, then they would lose their protections if they started censoring political speech from conservatives or liberals.
Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't know if you want. I didn't want to jump on anyone else's words. Well,
no, go ahead. Jump away.
And here's the challenge. That's why I say we're in a cultural change. If we say we're in a cultural change equivalent to printing itself, which I agree with that statement. I think this is providing access to and from in a way that's never seen before. We're gonna be facing these challenges because social media allows knuckleheads to come across as legitimate journalists, if you will, and then you if you want to kind of refine it down a little bit, you have people that are probably qualified, skilled journalists that may even go off the reservation at times. And so where do you draw that line? They always say, well, everything is on the internet, so it must be true. We joke about that. But
who believes anything on the internet?
Yeah.
There's a lot of power. There was an article that someone sent me last week that said the legislature in Minnesota passed and the Department of Education is now implementing a requirement to be what's the word? To be proficient in Arabic by the time you graduate senior in high school. Well, as you might imagine, that's a pretty inflammatory thing right now in our society, right?
In Minnesota, it is.
The problem is and it's legitimate enough that I had to dig. I mean, I knew that it didn't pass the legislature because we would have known that, just simply put. And people say that, well, maybe you don't. Yeah, we would have known that. But could the Department of Education had some rulemaking? Was there at least an element of truth to that? I had to find out because this is important to people. Well, it turns out that there's no truth to it whatsoever. But it was online, and someone was sharing it with me, gravely concerned. Why? Because it was printed. That's a problem. I mean, that's a problem that we're facing. But again,
Well,
the government needs to be the referee on that. I don't know. I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying no. But I lean towards I don't think they should be.
no, I definitely don't think the government should be any referee in social media. I think that there's a private market approach or a private market solution to just about all of our problems, and there should be some some website out there created where, as a user of social media, when I see myself censored, I should be able to post some kind of verified screenshot of what's before and then after to and they can sit and track all the types of posts and the types of messaging that are being censored by Facebook or Twitter, and that we can actually collect data and be scrutinizing these systems, and it can be public. Because a lot of people, I mean, when I got involved in politics, I couldn't believe how much censorship goes on in Facebook and how much of my stuff. I posted an ad when I was running, you can pay for ads, of my two daughters and my nephew sitting on the front porch, and it just said something about, I don't know, like my, Munson, less government. And Facebook denied it because it didn't meet their requirements for diversity.
Because you're a white cisgendered male, Jeremy.
Because this is my family. I can't make it. I can't make, my daughter, I can't, Photoshop her to be, black just to get it accepted by Facebook.
Why not?
Hey, I mean, I'll loan you one of my kids for your next shoot.
But it's just like, come on, and it was a way for them to deny an ad, 3 days before the election. It ticked me off. But to, be nice to be able to submit that somewhere, because if me and 1,000 other people like me, continue to submit it, then we have something to show, not the government, but show the public. Hey, this is verified information to show how Facebook is censoring this. And, then we can have the reaction of the market, the free market can react and the pendulum can start to swing the other way. So I just think there's a better solution than getting government involved. Government is usually not the answer.
So what is the limit on First Amendment? I mean, where do we meet the limit? I mean, this week there was all types of outrage about the people yelling "Send her back," chanting "Send her back" in reference to Elon Omar. And I mean, there was quite, well, I think it was fake outrage. I don't think people were really that upset about it. But of course, if you watch some of the mainstream media outlets, you would be convinced that it was just a major uproar. I mean, where do we draw the line? I mean, do you really believe that people ought to be able to say whatever they want to say?
Yes. I mean, now you made a very broad statement, but here's the deal. In the last handful of years, it's been popular to say what? Hate speech is not free speech, right?
Right.
Actually, it depends on what you mean by that, but you go with the general comment, like that would be an example of hate speech. I think most people that would say that. Okay. We have our free speech protections because we say things that are provocative. Okay. I go back to, I keep coming to my mind. It was Benjamin Franklin. What was his pen name when he was writing those letters?
Silence do good.
What's that?
Silence do good.
Yes. So he was doing that for his own safety, but he was saying very provocative things. And when they formed the country and the Constitution, it was with that sort of stuff in mind, that you should have a right to say that and actually stand with your face in the room to be able to say that. Okay. So if someone's chanting out, send her back, is that insulting? Is that knucklehead? Is that something that shouldn't be said?
No.
Absolutely. But what, are you going to start arresting them? Or are you going to start, somehow they always have the 1 degree of separation back to Trump. They want to have him impeached because someone else is saying send her back. I'm not saying they're saying that, but that seems like what it always is. This always gets steered back at Trump. The things that AOC says, the things that Ilhan Omar say can be incredibly provocative. Okay. But I say, let them say it. Now, it's a little bit easier for me to say, let them say it, because I think they're killing their chances of other people around them in the Democrat Party from getting elected or reelected because of that.
So I have a huge problem with this, right? Because the issue is that the Democrat. Let me back up. About 15, 20 years ago, the Republicans really branded themselves as being the party that was against abortion, right? They rode that, but unfortunately, I didn't see a whole lot of decrease in the amount of abortions that were done under Bush than under Obama. Okay. But they branded themselves that way, knowing that because of the conservative Catholics and conservative Lutherans, for example, that there are a lot of people that are one issue voters, Tim. You know that to be the case. I mean, that is the one issue that really gets them out to vote is the right to life, right? Unfortunately,
out here we kind of say Congressional District 7, guns and babies.
Okay, so and I'm okay with that because I love guns and I love babies, right? All right, so I'm fine with that. The problem that I have with it is this: the Democrats have done the exact same thing, whether we realize it or not. The one issue that they're putting out there is racism, right? That's the issue that they're pushing. If you are against racism, you have to vote for us. Much like the Republicans said, if you are against killing babies, you got to vote for us.
That's right. No, I agree.
Which is unfortunately a very false narrative on both accounts, right? But I'm really frustrated because as someone who has experienced true racism, that I've dealt with that, it's made me a better person, right? But I'm not always looking around every rock for it. The problem is that for people who truly have experienced racism, I think it's going to backfire, and I think it already is. She came out a couple days after all this and said, "Well, every black person understands has been told to go back to Africa at some point or another." Let's back up a little bit. Yeah, I've heard that. People have said that before, and I'm not from Africa, so whatever. I'm from America. But the problem that I have with that is that she comes here and she's made some very, very, very provocative statements, you call them. I call them very, very negative statements as it pertains to America and our allies, right? And my argument from the get-go, I've said it here on the show and I'll say it again. If you are that patriotic and you have such a great mind to fix the problems that America has, well, then why didn't you offer that service to your own country? Why didn't you volunteer to try to fix that government? Why didn't you go back to try to fix that government? And if you hate the things that we do and the way that we do things so much, then maybe you're in the wrong position. I mean, I understand that you're going to fix some things, but I haven't heard a whole lot of positive things come out of her mouth about our country. It's been a lot of negative that has come out. So personally, Trump came out, he denounced the statements. He said that it was wrong, that he didn't agree with that. But at the same time, in all fairness, she said far worse about the people of America and painted us to be all racist, homophobic, xenophobic, and evil people. So I'm sorry, there's going to be some backlash as a result of that.
So let me say something provocative to make a point. I actually support Ilhan Omar in her right to say what she's saying, whether it be about Israel, whether it be... Now, is it destructive to the United States? Yes, I do believe it is. And I think that most people would say that. I think even people that might support her, if they were able to, rationally look at it, they could see where you do not want a congresswoman talking about things that are destructive to the United States. But in fairness to her, she's saying this is the way the United States needs to change. And as we often say, guess what? She has an election certificate. In this area, she has not done anything that has broken a law for sure. It starts getting a little bit borderline on the ethic of the way that she has said things and the way that she has been condemning of certain people, where she doesn't, there's certain standards by which if you're elected, you should speak in certain ways, and if you cross the line, you get censured for it. Has she done some of that? She's certainly come close, if hasn't come over the line. But my argument, the reason why I say that I support Ilhan Omar and her right to say what she wants to say, is just the point that you made. People find things that I say about life incredibly provocative, dare I say, even offensive to them. I don't think they're putting up an act. When I say if there's a heartbeat, you should take away that mother's ability to stop the life of that child. When I say that, there's people that legitimately say I'm trying to control a woman. Now, I don't agree with that statement, but they are offended by what I'm saying because of that. That's the discourse that we need to be allowed to have in the great United States. Now, would I like to see the people that are wanting to steer us towards socialism voted out and gone? Absolutely, but that's where the people come in. If they vote these people in, then they're voting in socialism. I can't necessarily stop that.
I 100% agree. The problem is that we have a lot of people out there, even that claim to be conservatives, that while they're against Ilhan Omar's version of socialism, they support other forms of socialism. I know. Look at John McCain. Supposed to be dyed-in-the-wool Republican. He had an opportunity to do away with Obamacare. Thank you, and really stabbed us all in the back as a result of that. Now I know that, Tim, we've had a discussion in the past about Obamacare not being so easy to get rid of, and that people would die in the process of just getting rid of it and not replacing it with something else. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I got out of our conversation. Is that fair to what you said?
Well, close enough. You haven't stepped into a place where I have to start defending what I said. That was close enough.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth ever. But of course, me being a limited government guy, man, I say people are dying already. I mean, my attitude on that is people are dying already. People are not able to afford healthcare coverage because price is way out of line. And I'm not saying I want people to die. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the government has created a problem with Obamacare, and there are a lot of people who aren't able to afford coverage that were once covered, but because of this terrible, terrible legislation, they're not able to be covered. Now, Jeremy, I know that we talked a little bit before. You're actually working on something to try to help reduce the cost or help Minnesotans, and hopefully this is something that can be spread throughout the country.
Yeah. So I'm a chief author of a bill in the House called the Patient Right to Shop Act. And I'm a big advocate for free markets. And I see our healthcare as being just so overly regulated by the government. And one of the things that's missing, healthcare is the last sector of our economy that doesn't have any price transparency. So you go to the doctor's office and you have no idea what things cost. The first question they ask you is, well, who do you have for insurance? Well, why does that matter? Because the insurance company dictates what the price is, right? So there's no other business where you walk in and 5 different people get 5 completely different prices based on what club they're in, or how they affiliate. So this basically would require all doctors and clinics have to post their prices, and everything would be transparent. And then your insurance company, your insurance that you have, has a certain amount that they pay in network for your services, and you would be able to go to take that amount of money and apply it to any service, from any doctor anywhere you want. So they would pay up to their in-network price. Now, the greatest thing about this bill is if your in-network average for an MRI is $3,000, and you want to drive to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and where it's $1,000, you'll save $2,000. The insurance company will give you half of that savings under this bill. So you'll get a check into a That's a special account for $1,000. The other $1,000 goes into the insurance pool to lower the costs for everyone else. And this is called a shared savings incentive program. And it basically will incentivize people to shop for care. The people that spend the most money in our society, the sickest people, have the greatest incentive to shop. There's a legislator down in southern Minnesota here, Rod Hamilton, who has MS, and he spends about $17,000 a month for an infusion. And he knows where it's $4,000 cheaper, but he can't go there because it's out of network. Well, under this program, if he went there, he would get a check every month for $2,000. It could basically you would have a program where people that shop for care could pay for all of their health care, premiums just by shopping. And that would drive down the cost over time. It would drive down the prices for everyone because there's a lot of services out there, especially lab work and imaging, that is way overpriced. But because there's no price transparency, they can charge what they want. And so that we need to go back to a society where we have, choice, and you should be shopping for doctors based on price and quality of care, and not where your insurance company dictates you go. So that would be, it would be a pretty drastic change. Obviously, the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies hate this idea, but bringing about full price transparency is a big deal. I had a bill last year that requires doctors and clinics to post the 25 most frequently billed services, and then the cash price, the average of private insurance pricing, and then Medicare and Medicaid pricing in their waiting room and on their website. And that bill passed, the Governor Dayton signed it into law, and it went into effect July 1st. So it's already law. When you go into your doctor's office, you'll at least start to see some of the prices, at least the most frequently billed ones. So we can start to shop around. And hopefully somebody will build an app for your smartphone where you can actually, shop for an MRI, almost like Priceline. You could start bidding stuff and for the preventative care and start driving those costs down.
Yeah, there's an app on my phone that I just because I've had some health issues here recent, and there's an app on my phone where I can actually put the name of the medication that I'm taking in it, and it'll give me in my area within like a 40-mile radius the price for that medication, which I think is great. It'd be great if we could do that with other services as well. So for Tim, I really would like to know. So I know you're a supporter of this bill because you've told me about it. So that's exciting to see. Tim, are you requiring that they are going to cover medical marijuana?
I don't know, Jeremy. Where does it go with that?
There's no requirements on what it covers, but look, we passed. I shouldn't say we passed. The legislature, most Republicans and most Democrats voted for the opioid bill that went into effect July 1st, and that has some major changes to how opiates are prescribed. I'm a very, very vocal opponent of this bill because it grows government, it injects government between the patient and the doctor, and it starts putting more kind of liability on doctors for how they prescribe and restricts how they can do it. I've heard from so many people who have the long-term pain patients, and their prescription, they have to go in every month and get it filled because they can't get a 90-day supply anymore. Guy went in yesterday, and the doctor said, well, the new law says that the prescription has to be written within so many days, so he had to go back to his doctor to get it redone, and he uses Metro Mobility. So it was a terrible bill, but we should be looking at other, alternative pain medications like medical marijuana, like kratom or acupuncture, other options, so that people aren't they know the risks of opiates and can look for other pain medication.
So let me. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Jeremy, but if a bill came through that was going to support medical marijuana as being a covered treatment, would you support that?
Trying to think about mandates on insurance companies. I think that I don't know if you should mandate that insurance companies have to cover it, because there's also some. Isn't there Medishare? If it's against their religion, should they be covering it? I don't know. But,
so. And I actually asked you that question for a reason. It wasn't supposed to be an aha moment, but Tim, we've had discussions. Essentially, I've talked about, and I love you, and thank you so much for continuing to come on the show. I've got to say, this man has never backed down from a fight, ever. And we've gotten into some pretty big debates, but he's always been very gracious, and I appreciate that. But that doesn't stop me from ribbing you a little bit, Tim. So, and I hope you know it's all in love. But with that being said, we've had discussions essentially about religion and government, and where does religion fall within government. We've had discussions as far as, I personally believe in the goodness of man. I believe that most men are good, and they have good intentions. There are some bad ones out there, but I feel that a lot of laws punish people for the wrong actions of others. But I mean, you mentioned that as far as the MetaShare or those types of programs that are Christian-based programs. Where is that line drawn, though? I mean, in both of your minds, where is that line drawn? I mean, how far does religion go into government, and I guess most importantly Christianity? Because I think that we would say that our Constitution and our laws were mostly formed off of a Christian basis. Would you guys both agree with that, or if you disagree, that's fine too?
I do. I agree.
Yeah, I would say it was formed on a Christian basis, but I'd also say that our founders, knew the history of religion and its involvement in government in Europe, and they wanted to have a separation of church and state, where the Pope's involvement in declaring a Holy Roman Emperor and such was not to take place in the United States. We can have Christian values, and we can allow legislators to be openly Christian and practice their religion, or whatever the religion is, but we shouldn't have mandates and dictates from theological leaders. And we have to protect people's right to practice whatever they want to practice.
So for me, the role of, and I'll say specifically Christianity,
So
what I am. Oh, someone want to say something?
I was going to ask if that included polygamy. To Jeremy's statements earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, allowing people to practice their faith. I think that
polygamy in a religious sense. I'm making a reference to the Latter-day Saints of Utah. Back when, just before Utah was admitted into the Union, one of the stipulations was that they outlaw polygamy.
Yeah, I mean, you're dragging me down a hole. I don't know. I don't know enough about to speak to. I mean, I guess I would just say that, one of the things I love about being a Republican is that we protect minorities. We protect the minority voice. And so we have to make sure that what we do as government doesn't infringe on the rights of the individual. And, I certainly don't like a lot of the stuff I see when I read about polygamy in the news. So I don't know how to kind of state that broad idea and how it pertains to polygamy, but I just know that that our founders didn't want religion influencing politics like it had in Europe in years past, with especially with the Pope, with his influence on government.
So, and we have, Q, you and I have had these discussions a couple of weeks ago. We kind of got right to the heart of it, is, if you will, where does my Christianity apply? When I think it was on the marijuana subject, right? I mean, because when it came right down to it, I just thought that it was bad for society, and it has a lot to do with my faith. My decision on life is a little bit different than yours, in that, and you're a Christian man too, so I don't want to make a hard distinction on this, but your point of emphasis on life was that's an individual's liberty that you're infringing on by saying you can kill them. Whereas for me, I said, it's my faith says that that's a gift from God, and you're not going to take that from someone. So
actually, that we were specifically talking about government, or not government, but physician assisted suicide, and whether or not we felt that it was right.
And so what my answer is where my religion, where my faith stands with is it's part of who I am, and I'm not going to check it at the door. And so, but for me to say, thus saith the Lord, and therefore, well, I could actually write a bill that says thus saith the Lord, but I'm held accountable for that, right? So, but for me to have a reasonable expectation that people should follow the laws of Christianity as part of our nation is an unreasonable request. Okay, but what is a reasonable thing is I'm going to be who I am, and the voters are going to decide if my decisions and the reason why I base it on is worth a yes vote versus voting for the other person. That's the point at which that's determined. And so where I get a little bit rubbed raw, and it doesn't happen often, actually comes from Christians more than anyone else. They're saying, well, you can't put your Christian faith into your politics, into what you do. And I go, no, that's exactly what I'm going to do, because that's who I am. And if you don't like it, vote me out of office. So to the degree, if someone were to say, does that mean that Ilhan Omar can espouse her Islamic faith in the things that she does? My answer would be yes, she can. And if you don't like it, get her voted out of office. Now, I don't like when people kind of skirt around the issue. She needs to be more upfront with some of the things she says and why she says it. So like her statements about Israel are not some sort of like, higher order sort of just natural thing about Israel. She's Islamic. She hates Israel. Okay. Fess up to it. Okay. No, that's where I have my problem.
I agree with you on that, but so the natural progression there in my mind is, okay, that's fine, but where do we go with Sharia law then? If you believe that she has the right to, so where do you draw the line as it pertains? Because we are dealing with that, and a lot of other countries are dealing with the idea that Sharia law should be incorporated in some way. Where is your stance on that, or what is y'all's stance on that?
Because there is, in the law of the United States of America, we have the highest order called the Constitution of the United States. Okay? And you can go into what the courts say off of that, case law and stuff like that. But fundamentally, it's the Constitution of the United States. There's a presumption that Sharia law is that it supersedes the Constitution of the United States. So absolutely, there's not. Now, if in the personal practice within her household, they practice things that are, there's going to be a gray area here. We can have exceptions. We might have to argue about, but fundamentally, can she practice Sharia law in her house? Go ahead. The reason why I say we get into some gray areas, because one of the big arguments in the state of Minnesota in the last couple of years has been the genital mutilation, which is certainly something that's cultural. Maybe not everyone in that culture, but it's a cultural thing where they mutilate the genitals of girls. They actually sew certain things shut. What's that? I thought someone said something. So anyway, are we okay with that? No. I know that I'd heard, and if there's any Hmongs listening, I don't want to be wrong with this, but I had heard that when the Hmongs really started establishing themselves, there were some cultural practices that they did that were kind of outside the realm, just within their own communities, but they were doing some things that were outside the realms of the law of the United States. You talk about polygamy with the Latter-day Saints, I do think that there are some things that we have to discuss, that even if it's, if you will, in your own household. But fundamentally on the Sharia law thing, the presumption of Sharia law is that it supersedes the Constitution of the United States, and I'm not going to support that.
As far as a polygamy thing, Soder's just trying to stir up some trouble. because that's what he likes to do. That's his role on the show, is to stir things up a little bit. But as far as the polygamy thing goes, I personally, man, we've come to a place now where, I mean, love who you love, right? I mean, if you're going to love who you love, then you're going to have the right to pursue that. Within.
Hey, have you guys watched the show Big Love, but the HBO show? Did you ever watch that one?
I did. But if we're going to preach love who you love, I mean, if a guy, if there's 3 consenting adults that decide that they want to live under the rule of marriage, they should have the right to do that.
And that was, I argued when they were talking about same-sex marriage, I said you have a stronger cultural argument for polygamy than you do same-sex marriage, because again, the procreation thing that I talked about, the need for society to procreate, in a polygamous marriage, you're going to procreate like crazy. Where in same-sex, you're not. But here is, when I pick on you fundamentalist libertarians, this isn't where you go down a funny place when you say, if it's not hurting, it should be able to do it. Why should you not be able to have sex with your dog?
That's a good question.
Way,
because it hurts the dog.
People that are listening, I'm throwing out a hypothetical question.
It's not fair to the dog. It's taking away the rights of the dog. The dog didn't ask for that.
Dogs don't have rights. They're animals.
Well, are you kidding me?
Constitutional rights.
Well, I tell you what, you shoot a dog in your backyard this evening, and I guarantee you there will be hell to pay.
How do we know that? How do we know that man and that dog isn't in a loving relationship?
I guess we don't. But like I said, Tim, you're getting closer. You're getting closer. But the only way that you're going to be able to be consistent as a legislator is you're going to have to come over to the libertarian side. There's just no other way for you to be fully 100% consistent.
I have no problem with being inconsistent. When do you think I want to be consistent?
Well, you're doing a fine.
That's going to get clipped.
I was going to clip the part where he said he supports Omar.
I told you on a hands-free bill, I voted both ways. What more do you want, for an example?
Which way passed?
Okay.
Which way caused my pain on the road?
Right.
Which one is it, Tim? Did you vote yes for the time that mattered?
It wouldn't have mattered which way you voted on that bill. It was passing.
Absolutely.
Overwhelmingly.
No, that's not what I asked. I asked, did he vote yes when it mattered for the bill to go forward to become law?
So I don't really have a dog in the fight because I'm not your constituent, but Soder is. So go ahead.
No, I know what he's asking, and what he's asking. Actually, I voted no when it mattered, and I voted yes when it didn't matter.
Okay, that's all I was. That's all I did it the right way.
So here's the deal. There's a presumption of what motivates us to vote one way or another. And I can tell you, Jeremy said, if you will, it was going to pass anyway, which I know that a libertarian that about kills the person to say that. I voted for it because it was going to pass anyway. Although you want me to vote for marijuana because it's going to pass anyway. But back on this law, I voted yes on the final bill.
I want you to vote on marijuana because it's a freedom issue. The government should not be able to determine which plants are okay and which plants are not. But go ahead.
I voted. My final vote where I voted yes for, I voted for a bill, again, by and large, to a whole lot, okay? So it makes it a little bit stomach-worthy, but I looked at that final vote, and I had people talking with me, and I said, I have a choice to either up libertarian friends and the purity of my vote and the consistency of my vote, or I have this guy that I see from time to time that looks me in the eyes, and right or wrong, he says, please make it so that my son's death meant something. And I will tell you, between those two people, I'll take the guff from you guys any day, okay? Because by the way, the bill that passed, I don't think addressed anything we lost someone. I don't think that the bill that passed would have affected the story with his son. That's one of the conversations I had. But people don't, when they're thinking with emotions, and valid emotions, by the way, the rational doesn't always happen. And I will tell you that as a legislator, I defend myself to this day that you have to than just rational thought. You have to reality of. And I know you and say, I know it. He's part of the swamp. He's part of the swamp. Go ahead and label.
Well,
that's why I award it every week.
So I'll just say that there's a few emotional pieces of legislation that passed this year, and the hands-free bill was one of them. I was an outspoken critic of it from the beginning and throughout the whole process and all the different amendments. I spoke out against the bill because it doesn't do what the people think it's going to do. And I met with victims in my district, people who lost loved ones, and said, this bill isn't going to stop that. In fact, this bill actually carves out and promotes hands-free texting. It doesn't ban texting at all. I mean, it doesn't change. It doesn't change the texting ban. It just legitimizes hands-free texting. All this interaction that you have while you're driving down the road allows you to compose emails and post Facebook updates and respond to have all your Twitter updates read to you while you're driving. That actually has a larger cognitive distraction than holding your phone and to your ear. And it doesn't ban the hands-free texting. It just bans holding your phone. And actually, this bill, as written, bans smartwatches. So come August 1st, it will be illegal to have a smartwatch on your wrist, whether it's on or off, while you're going down the road. And so, I mean, this is go ahead.
So what about hands-free eating? Are you guys going to introduce a bill for that?
We said that there's so many more distractions. People need to pay attention while driving. It's an education thing. It's not, you can't police this. And if you do kill someone or hurt someone and the cops somehow manage to violate your Fourth Amendment and get your phone, there's nothing on the phone or the wireless carrier records that show whether the text message was sent hands-free or not. So they can't prosecute you. You can't prove whether the text message was sent, that I'd send it with my thumbs. The only thing they can do is have police officers, drive around in buses now to look down into your car to see if you're holding your phone.
I can tell you right now, if I drop a McDonald's French fry on the floor while I'm driving, I'm picking that son of a gun up.
Well, actually, one of the worst things in my car are flies, man. Trying to get a fly to get out the window when you're down the highway, or a damn bee in your car. That's probably the most distracting thing, right? Or right. people that don't like spiders, I mean, there's a lot more things that can cause accidents out there.
Children. I ran a stop sign because my kids were yelling and carrying on. Granted, it was in a place I didn't know there was a stop sign. I haven't been there in years, and it was new. But
here's the
Are we gonna have hands-free kids now?
We need to embrace technology like autonomous vehicles, cameras in the dashboard that brake for you if you don't brake, that keep you in your lane, all that kind of stuff. It's coming so rapidly that we'll be beyond the curve here shortly. But there's a free market response. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no. And here's the irony. If you want to understand the irony in legislation, there was is Constantine your seatmate, or is he just right by you, Jeremy?
You mean
Representative Constantine?
Oh yeah, he's not my seatmate. He's by me though. Yeah, next door.
Right by you, okay. So Representative Constantine wrote a bill, and it was a clumsy bill. Okay, that was it was not written to perfection, but basically what it said is if you drive through an intersection and kill someone, because see, if you drive through an intersection distracted and kill someone, it's still virtually impossible to prosecute them anything beyond basically a serious accident. Okay, and he went in and said, you know what? If you're doing like your face is down in your phone and you drive through and kill someone, that should be a higher order crime, similar to killing someone while driving drunk or something like that. He couldn't get any traction on that because it got all into sentencing law and all these other things that drag bills down. And so if you want to talk about something that can actually address the problem, maybe not prevent it, but address the problem that most people would agree with, we couldn't get that legislation through. what this is, right, what Jeremy said in the beginning is exactly right. There was about 3 or 4 bills this year that were promoted and passed on a motion. This was certainly one of them.
Yeah, the opioid bill was another.
Bill was a huge one. The opioid bill, typically a final bill after it goes through conference committee between the House and Senate, if anything changes, it usually ends up watering it down and makes it a little bit anemic. They actually managed to find a way to come out of conference committee where it was even worse than it was before. But when you discuss, well, here's the problem, here's what happens because, like some of the things that Jeremy said, some of the consequences of this, of the relationship with the doctor and their patient, you got shouted down. You got shouted down as not having the courage to do the right thing. Well, what does courage doing the right thing mean? Like, quantify that. What are the bullet points of that?
Less government.
Yeah, I mean, look, the opioid bill, which was a terrible bill on how it puts restrictions on doctors, but it also assesses $24 million a year on the opioid industry, basically raising the cost of important drugs for people that are in pain and at the end of their lives, in order to use that money to fight crime. Whether or not companies 30 years ago lied about the addictiveness of these drugs, that's kind of what the Democrats and these Democrat light Republicans are angry about. We need to make them pay for what they did. Well, I support that, but not through legislation. I support Keith Ellison's law joining 11 other states to sue the opioid manufacturers to see if they actually did lie about that, and if there was some conspiracy internally and lying to the public. And if that comes out that they actually did lie and they are liable for stuff, then let the court play that out. But that doesn't belong in the legislature. I can't be judge, jury, and executioner and cast punitive damages against companies.
Soder?
Yeah.
We can make a lot of money off this video. So we have Jeremy Munson saying that he supports Keith Ellison. And then we have Tim saying that he supports Ilhan Omar. This could be fun.
I wonder what those campaign finance entries would look like.
Look, I mean, as much as I disagree with Keith Ellison or Tim Walz, once in a while they're right on things, and I'm not afraid to call them out and say Tim Walz was right for throwing away MNLARs, and Keith Ellison's right for suing the opioid manufacturers, because that's the right course for this. It doesn't belong in an emotional legislature to try to assess punitive damages. Same thing with the insulin bill. That was an emotional bill where they want to lower the cost of insulin by taxing it $10 million a year. That doesn't make any sense at all.
I give you a lot of credit, and I'm all for that, guys. As you guys know, the spirit of this show is that we want to talk about things, but we want to talk about things not only with the people we agree with and create an echo chamber where we can just kind of swap ideas and sit on a soapbox. We want to be able to sharpen each other's minds, and if someone has a good idea, whether or not they sit on the same side of the aisle, give them credit. I was very upset with some of I didn't support Obama. I didn't particularly care for Obama, but solely from not from a personal standpoint, but mostly from a political standpoint. I didn't agree with a lot of his political views, but there were some things that he did that I actually thought were okay. But I was able to give him credit for the things that I thought were okay. It was few and far between, but I was able to give him the credit for that. The problem that I have with the treatment of this president is man, he has done some great things. For one, the prison reform bill that he's helped push through, I thought that was fantastic legislation. But he doesn't get a lot of credit for that. There are a couple of Democrats that did, but most won't even bring it up because they don't want that to become a voting point, because they know that's something that's very important to a lot of people. So no, I give both of you guys credit for that. Hey, if someone does something right, we need to give them credit where credit is due. If someone does something wrong, then we need to also hold them accountable for that as well. So I was joking with you guys about the whole supporting Omar and Ellison thing. The Ellison thing gets under my craw a little bit more than Omar even, but we'll talk about that another time. So, but guys, thank you guys so much for being on.
Hey, before we go, I have a question for Representative Munson.
Yeah.
Have you read Anthem by Ayn Rand?
Anthem? No, I've not.
Okay.
Oh.
Have you, Miller? Have you read it yet?
I've had Rakita give it to me like 3 times, and I threw it away each time.
Okay, is that because there's no pictures?
Yeah,
this is a legitimate question because they just came out with a graphic novel, and I'm willing to send you a copy because I bought you a copy.
I have not thrown away my copy of Anthem. I just haven't read it.
Okay, yeah, but if you had a graphic novel version, would you read it sooner?
No. Now, if it was Audible, I might read it sooner.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
I've got Fountainhead sitting on my nightside table, but
okay, I'll find an audio version for you, and we'll check in a couple of weeks.
I don't know why. What's funny is you guys, the people that like follow Ayn Rand, have this need. I mean, it's like I had less of a threat.
We all have needs, Tim.
Can I give you the Bible? It's like, can you read this for me? Read this for me and tell me what you think.
Well, we're just trying to help you to be a better legislator. That's all.
I don't want to know what you think. I just want to know if you read it.
No.
All right, I'll send you both.
I did just finish the biography a couple months ago, or about a month and a half ago. I finally finished the biography of Winston Churchill. It took 52 hours of listening to hear it, but I heard it.
He's not even American.
It's probably like 26 times for Anthem.
Isn't Anthem like a 12-page book or something?
It's a short story, yeah. I don't know how long it is exactly, but it is short.
Okay.
Well, I'll listen to it if you find me an Audible.
All right, I will find you an audio version, and you guys can do it whenever.
And it's just because we spend so much time in the car. I mean, I drive 40,000 miles a year, and when the district's huge, so I'm driving all around the district too. So be a good time.
Yep.
All right.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was a great show. Great getting a chance to hear from you. The people definitely enjoyed hearing from you guys. I would love to have you back on and focus more on the idea of limited government and how we get to that point. I know it's something a lot of people are talking about, and I believe that this next generation, Tim, is going to save the republic. I believe this next generation, on both sides, are sick of paying for the decisions of the before generations. Tim, you can roll your eyes if you want to, but it's the truth.
Here's the truth. If you have a problem about it, change it. Don't bitch about it.
I didn't. I voted you in. That's what I did to change it.
Well, I'm not changing it. You've learned that by now.
The only thing that I can do to change it at this point is to vote and then to talk about it on this show. Now, if you have another idea of something I can do to help change it, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so here's where he has to be focused. So if we talk about, I'm going to throw out student debt as one. If you want to say we threw you guys into a horrible debt because of student debt, then go after the colleges that you decided to go to that charge way overcharged so that you could get a creative writing degree that doesn't give you a job. And now you have a $60,000 student loan debt. I didn't give you that student loan debt. You did.
No, my wife did.
Yeah, fair enough. My wife did too.
Okay, in all fairness, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is terrible legislation like the Patriot Act. I had no say-so in the officials that were elected that voted for those things. Things like Medicare, things like going away from the gold standard. I had no say-so in those types of things.
Neither did I.
I'm not. At what point have I attacked you on these matters? What I'm saying is that it's up to my generation and our generation to change it. And I truly believe 100% that this generation will, because this generation is looking at this and saying, okay, we have this humongous governmental system. What are they doing for us? What have they done for us, and how are they making our lives better? And right now they're trying to sell us on this idea that all we need to do is give them more money and grow them more, and they can be more efficient if we only give them more power, which I think all of us are smart enough to realize, no, that's not the way that it's going to happen. And that's not the way it's going to go. We've given them unfettered access to our personal communications. We've given them unfettered access to our finances and all these other, I mean, they take money out of my check before I even see it. So with that being said, I think that this generation is going to be the generation to change those things.
Good.
And I can only hope and pray that that's the case. I just hope you don't get in the way, Tim.
Q 2020.
No, thank you.
Yes.
No, thank you. What was that?
Say, Tim?
It's getting dark out. I was wondering if we're wrapping up. I'm actually darker than a brown paper bag right now. Did I just say that?
Yes.
You did. You did. You passed the brown paper bag test, Tim.
Yeah.
So, but again, thank you, Jeremy. I'd love to have you back on and to talk about what that means and how we can help to shrink government and make it more efficient and make it work for the people again.
Yeah.
So yeah, but thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy. Tim, thank you again for being here, and thank you for staying up past your bedtime. I know you're usually in bed by now.
Bad, I'm tired.
So, but hey, once again, thank you guys for all you guys that are out there that are watching and tuned in. Help us to get on more and to put more content out there. Just make sure you subscribe, press the subscribe button. Make sure you tell other people about the show so that they can also be involved. Again, we're not here to propagandize people. We're not here to change people. We're just here to exchange ideas, and we hope that can be helpful to everyone. And we're also here to hear out other ideas, even if they don't necessarily agree with ours. So once again,
if they can hear the show,
if they can hear the show,
we fix this week. But
yeah. Hopefully. And
before we check out, I need to ask one question. Who's the unknown guest that's in the middle that's been muted this whole time?
That's
Big Brother.
No, that's the streaming machine that's capturing the Hangout.
It's AI. It's AI.
It's Omar.
Yeah, no, that's Keith Ellison in the middle. So,
okay. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
Well, thank you guys.
See you soon.
We'll see you guys later. Have a great day.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
And